Have you ever played the Christmas game where there's a present wrapped in an absurd amount of wrapping paper? Sometimes it's not even just wrapping paper. Sometimes it's cling wrap or duct tape. Oftentimes you have to be wearing oven mitts while you're trying to unwrap it. You see, that game's fun because generally there's something good inside that you're trying to get to, and usually it's a bit of a competition too. But you're willing to go through all of that just to get to that thing that's on the inside. Now, depending on what it is that we're trying to get, we as people generally are willing to at least do something to get what we want, right? Well, today we're going to be looking at a day in the calendar of Israel called the Day of Atonement. It was a very, very big festival and a very, very important one. And as you hear about it, it's going to sound like there was an awful lot going on. And the people would do this every year. They would go through all of this every year to get to that thing that they were hoping to get. What is that? Access to God. You see, the whole year and life of Israel hinged on this one day. If this day didn't go right, they wouldn't be able to offer sacrifices, and they wouldn't have access to God. And along with it, their sins wouldn't be forgiven. Forgiveness of sins and access to God. That's what this day is all about. So what did it look like? Well, we're going to be doing exactly that. We're going to be doing a flyover view of what the Day of Atonement would have looked like. Now, nearly everything that we're going to be talking about comes from Leviticus chapter 16. That's the chapter that was written for the priests. We'll hear a little bit from chapter 23, the chapter that we've been in an awful lot for the last several weeks. But that chapter was written for the people generally, and so we have less details about it. But starting right now, chapter 16. Listen. This is how Aaron is to enter the most holy place. He must first bring a young bull for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. He's to put on the sacred linen tunic, with linen undergarments next to his body. He's to tie the linen sash around him and put on the linen turban. These are sacred garments, so he must bathe himself with water before he puts them on. From the Israelite community, he is to take 2 male goats for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. Aaron is to offer the bull for his own sin offering to make atonement for himself and his household. So in preparation for the Day of Atonement, the priest collects a bunch of different animals that are going to be sacrificed. He washes himself and he puts on specific clothing. And with that, he's ready to get down to the business of the day. Now on the screen, I'm going to show you there are different areas of the tabernacle or the temple that he would be in at the different points of the day, doing the different things. Next we hear, then he is to take the 2 goats and present them before the Lord at the entrance to the tent of meeting. He is to cast lots for the 2 goats, 1 lot for the Lord and the other for the scapegoat. Aaron shall bring the goat whose lot falls to the Lord and sacrifice it for a sin offering. But the goat chosen by lot as the scapegoat shall be presented alive before the Lord to be used for making atonement by sending it into the wilderness as a scapegoat. Now, as interesting as this bit is, I want to let you know that we need to hold on just a little bit. Leviticus is going to have more to say about the scapegoat, and coincidentally, so are we. Aaron shall bring the bull for his own sin offering to make atonement for himself and his household, and he is to slaughter the bull for his own sin offering. He is to take a censer full of burning coals from the altar before the Lord and 2 handfuls of finely ground fragrant incense and take them behind the curtain. He is to put the incense on the fire before the Lord, and the smoke of the incense will conceal the atonement cover above the tablets of the covenant law, so that he will not die. He is to take some of the bull's blood with his finger, sprinkle it on the front of the atonement cover. Then he shall sprinkle some of it with his finger 7 times before the atonement cover. So during this time, the priest makes a sacrifice on behalf of himself so that he'll be able to perform the duties for the rest of the day. Also interesting is at this point, he starts to move closer and closer to the most holy place. You can see in that picture that the temple is made up of 3 general sections. The most holy place is where God's presence is. And so, as the priest gets closer and closer to the most holy place, he's getting closer and closer to God. He shall then slaughter the goat for the sin offering for the people, and take its blood behind the curtain, and do with it as he did with the bull's blood. He shall sprinkle it on the atonement cover and in front of it. In this way he shall make atonement for the most holy place, because of the uncleanness and rebellion of the Israelites, whatever their sins have been. He is to do the same for the tent of meeting, which is among them in the midst of their uncleanness. No one is to be in the tent of meeting from the time Aaron goes in to make atonement in the most holy place until he comes out, having made atonement for himself, his household, and the whole community of Israel. Then he shall come out to the altar that is before the Lord and make atonement for it. He shall take some of the bull's blood and some of the goat's blood and put it on all the horns of the altar. He shall sprinkle some of the blood on it with his finger 7 times to cleanse it and to consecrate it from the uncleanness of the Israelites. So the high priest goes about covering different parts of the tabernacle in blood. Now he's doing this because the sin of the people has polluted the place. And so by going through these duties, God is allowing the people to continue to make sacrifices at the temple and to continue to have access to God for the coming year. When Aaron has finished making atonement for the most holy place, the tent of meeting, and the altar, he shall bring forward the live goat. He is to lay both hands on the head of the live goat and confess over it all the wickedness and rebellion of the Israelites, all their sins, and put them on the goat's head. He shall send the goat away into the wilderness in the care of someone appointed for the task. The goat will carry on itself all their sins to a remote place, and the man shall release it in the wilderness. So one of the animals gets to live. Well, in a sense. This scapegoat, which we're going to spend more time talking about in just a moment, has the sin of the whole nation of Israel transferred to it, or placed on it. And it's sent away from them out into the wilderness, away from all the people. After all of this, things get cleaned up, and the day is concluded. The sacrifices allowed for the temple service to continue, as well as for the people to have connection with God on these terms. But it did not actually remove the sin from the people. That was the scapegoat's job. Which leads me into my 2 big observations for the day. There is a lot going on with the Day of Atonement. We could spend a lot of time talking about each of the different things that happen and come up and why they're important. But for today, I want to focus on 2 specific things. The first of them is that scapegoat. The sins of all of the people of Israel would be confessed over it. That is, the high priest would say the sins of all the people over the goat's head. Notice how it was referred to? Notice how sin was referred to. It was called their wickedness and rebellion. That's how God sees sin. It's not an oopsie. It's not a slip-up. It's wickedness and rebellion. We should let that sink in as we reflect on our own sin. All of the times that the people worshipped other gods, whether they're gods in the sense that they were statues in their homes that they bowed down to, or gods in the sense that they tend to pop up in our day and age today. Hidden gods like the love of money or the love of yourself over all things. What about all the times that the people chose to do what they thought they should do instead of what God had told them to do on those days of rest, ignoring his command that was for their own good? What about all of the times that the people dishonored their parents and their families? All the times that they got into fights? All the times they were unfaithful? All of the times that they stole, even those things that shouldn't really be considered stealing? All the times they coveted? Desired the things that other people had and they didn't? All of that amounts to rebellion against God. And in confessing it and saying what they did was wrong, by admitting it to God, all of that sin, all of that rebellion, all of that wickedness was placed on the goat. It was transferred from them onto the goat. Now we can do something just like that today. We can come before God and we confess what we have done. We can confess to God what I've done, what I've said, what I've thought was wrong. We can ask him for forgiveness. Let's take a couple moments to do that right now. Remember, there were 2 goats that day. And notice, the one who received the sins, the one that got all of the sins of all of the people, that was the one that was not killed. No, that goat, that one was led out into the wilderness and left there. Now that's fascinating, right? Because we know from other places in the Bible that the soul who sins must die. And the wages of sin, what sin earns, is death. Sin requires payment, and yet this goat, the one who's carrying all of the sin for the whole nation of Israel, was led out into the wilderness and just left there. It's almost as if, in a way, it was being left there until a later time, waiting for something else, waiting for someone else. When you read the accounts of Jesus' life, they focus on his public ministry, when he started doing things out in the open. Now, we usually say that starts when Jesus was baptized. Do you remember the very first thing that Jesus did after being baptized? Jesus went out into the wilderness and was tempted by Satan for 40 days. Jesus went out into the wilderness, like this goat was led out into the wilderness. Now, what was it that Jesus ultimately came to do? His friend Peter answers that question for us. We hear he, that is Jesus, he himself bore our sins in his body on the cross. It's as if all of those years of sin were waiting out there in the wilderness, waiting for Jesus to come and get them, along with everyone else's, and march them up to the cross, to take them to the tomb and leave them behind once and for all. Which leads me to my other big point. Who's doing the work? With the exception of the guy who walked the goat out into the wilderness and the guy who cleaned up the scraps after the business of all the day, other than that, all of the work was done by one person, Aaron. Aaron, at the time that Leviticus was written, but Aaron was going to die. And so after Aaron's time, it was the high priest. That one person did all of the work on the Day of Atonement. The people were not supposed to do any work at all. In Leviticus 23, the chapter written for the people, not for the priest, there's even a threat of being cut off from the community and even being destroyed if anyone did any work on that day. Now, being told to refrain from normal work on one of these special holidays was pretty normal. We see it with most of them. But on this day, out of all of the 7 big festivals, this is the only one where a threat is made for anyone who goes about doing work. Now, why is that? Well, it's this one day out of the whole calendar year that the people's sins were atoned for or covered over. For the Israelites before Jesus, this was the day of forgiveness of sins. And it was on this day God made it super extra clear to do no regular work. The one person working is the high priest, the person who stands between God and all the rest of the people. The high priest is the one who did all the work. You may be drawing parallels to today, and you may be tempted to think of pastors, but if you do, you would be missing the mark. You see, it's not the pastors, but Jesus. Jesus again. Jesus is the one doing the work of covering over, of taking away our sins, atoning for them. He's the one who does all the work, and we're supposed to rest. We're supposed to rest and trust him. Trust him that he's doing exactly that. Remember just a little bit ago when we confessed our sins to God? I want you to listen to this promise. If we confess our sins, he, that is God, is faithful and just and will forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. Why do we have that promise? Because our own high priest, our own scapegoat, our own perfect sacrifice, Jesus has already done all the work. Out of his great love for you, Jesus went to the cross. He died and he rose again to forgive you personally, of all of your wickedness and rebellion. And like the people that were hoping that through all of these ceremonies going on in the temple that they would get access to God, Jesus, through his own blood, not the blood of bulls and rams, has given us access to God. We, us, as his beloved children, can now approach him, not in fear, not in shame of our own unworthiness, but we approach him as forgiven, freed, and loved sons and daughters. And with that, we can speak to the creator and the ruler of the universe. So let's do it.